Hey guys, back with another video, and this is going to be a Mega Man series review. Something I've wanted to do for a while now. I have been doing, although it's been a while since I did my last one, like a Let's Review series on the Mega Man games, where I kind of play through each game in the series and give like really in-depth thoughts on them. And I probably still will be doing that, just not very often, like once every a long while. But I did want to do a video like this for people that don't want to like spend like hours watching those long videos, because I know a lot of people don't really have the time for that. So I wanted to do a video where I just kind of give very general thoughts on every game in the Classic series. This video will be covering the Classic series, so that I consider that Mega Man 1 through 10, including Mega Man and Bass. I'm going to talk briefly about the Game Boy Megamans. I don't really consider them a part of the Classic series. They're kind of their own things, but there is one of the Game Boy games I do want to talk about a bit, because I think it's very underrated and more people need to play it. But for this video, I'll just be talking about Mega Man 1 through 10. And the Classic Mega Man series is my favorite of all the Mega Man series. I will be doing an X series review at a later date. This will probably be... It might be a three-part video. It's going to be similar to my previous review series, where I would like talk about the games in the first two parts in like order of release date, and then the third part was just like a list with like a song playing in the background from like my least favorite all the way to my favorite. The Classic Mega Man series I love to death. I've been a huge fan ever since my first one, which I'll get to that, which game was my first. And it's been like a lifelong obsession with me. I always go back to these games. I'm always playing them. Just a childhood favorite, and I have a lot of nostalgic memories towards the series. And it's probably one of my favorite platformer series. Some people might not consider it a platformer. I always kind of have. Like, yeah, there's shooting in it. There's run and gun elements, but there's enough platforming in them. And in fact, it's kind of tough in a way, because it's like it really is like a platformer mixed with a run and gun. I've always considered them like 2D side-scrolling platformers, though, but definitely one of my all-time favorite series. And I guess we'll start off with the original Mega Man. So Mega Man 1, the introduction to the series, only on the NES. A surprise hit. It wasn't until Mega Man 2 that the series really caught on, but Mega Man was, the start of it all. There's a lot of differences with this one compared to later ones in the series. For one, there was score in this game. You actually got points in this, and you'd get like a total score at the end of each level, which was kind of a weird thing. There were only 6 Robot Masters. Later Mega Man games would always have 8. So this game's quite a bit shorter than every other Mega Man game. It was, the introduction to Dr. Wily as well. I'm not going to talk too much about the storylines in this video. I don't know, I've never, as much as I love the Mega Man games, I've always loved them for their gameplay, not really the story, the stories. I mean, they're pretty humorous and never take themselves too seriously, at least not until the X series came along. But they're goofy, they're fun, the storylines, but they're nothing to write home about. I'm not really gonna go into the details of each plot unless there's some really unless there's some interesting things happening with the plot. I will refer to another video, Happy Console Gamer, on his channel there's a Mega Man series review from Rob Man, and he goes over like the story for each game. Definitely check out that series review if you want more in-depth thoughts on like the storylines for each game. I'm not going to go into too much on that. I'm more going to talk about the gameplay and then what I thought of the game. And my personal history with it. And Mega Man 1, I didn't play when I was a kid. It came out in, what was it, 1986 or 88 or 7 or something? So before I was born. And I had an NES, like that was my first system. That's, there was one of the games on the NES is what introduced me to the series. But Mega Man 1, I never found that game. It was never in stores. My friend at the time, he was a big Mega Man nut as well, and he never played it either. We just couldn't find it. It wasn't until like the emulator days, when emulators became quite popular, that I went back and finally got to play Mega Man 1. And the first time playing it, I always thought like, man, this is so much harder than the others in the series. It's not until like only a few years ago where I've started to realize that Mega Man 1, at least for me, is not as hard as I always used to think it was. With some practice, it can be easily beaten, and it's pretty damn short. There's some very tough boss battles in it, though. The Yellow Devil is, of course, insane, unless you use that pause trick with the Elec Beam. Elec Man himself is really hard. He can kill you in like 2 hits. I think it's 2 or 3 hits with his electric attack. Rush wasn't yet in the original Mega Man. Instead, you had like what was it, the magnet beam that you kind of shot, that you jumped on, that you could kind of use as a platforming tool. It's the jumping felt a bit more stiff in this one too. I gotta say, overall, Mega Man, the original Mega Man is not one of my favorites. It's still fun to go through, but I don't know, the music's fantastic. Right from the start, Mega Man had amazing music, and on a consistent basis, the Mega Man games have always had terrific music, and it's the case here. Gutsman's music being a particular favorite for me. But yeah, it's, that classic gameplay was there. I mean, it introduced the ability to tackle each Robot Master that you wanted to tackle. And you got their powers, and it had like a rock paper scissors type thing. It was very innovative for its time, and graphically it looked amazing at the time, especially when you compared it with other NES games. I don't want to talk too much more about Mega Man, because I do have the Let's review for Mega Man, and I go more into my thoughts on the game there. But overall, a very good game to start off the series, though not one of my personal favorites. After Mega Man, of course, was Mega Man 2. This is when the series got really popular, and if you ask a lot of Mega Man fans, they're usually going to either say, at least as far as the classic series goes, that Mega Man 2 or 3 is their favorite, I find usually. I fucking love Mega Man 2. It's amazing. This one I did play when I was a kid. It wasn't my first. My friend had this along with Mega Man 3, and I would always borrow it, and I'd always play it when I was over at his house, just over and over and over again. A lot of notable additions with this one that I liked. 8 Robot Masters. They were a little more interesting in this game too. Graphically, it was better. The level design I thought was a lot more interesting and less frustrating overall. Mega Man 1 had a lot of frustrating levels and gimmicks. Not to say Mega Man 2 doesn't. Like the entire Wily, some of the areas of Wily's castle are pretty annoying, I thought. But the music. Well, I mean, what can you say about the music for Mega Man 2? One of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Dr. Wily's Stage 1 theme music is absolutely amazing, really epic, really gets you pumped for, storming Wily's castle. Really fun gameplay. Rush still wasn't introduced. You had like item 1, 2, and 3, which were kind of lame. They were kind of boring. And it's a minor complaint. When you got powers, I found it took way too long to get past all that. Like when you get a new power and Dr. Light's telling you what it is. But I mean, it's a really fast-paced, fun game. 2 difficulty levels, so it's a good intro to the series for people that want to get into the classic series but are kind of scared off by the difficulty. Although I've never considered the Mega Man games to be really that difficult, especially when you compare it alongside other NES games, like say the Ninja Gaiden series, for example. But there's a normal and a difficult mode. The normal mode is really, really easy, so that's a good mode for beginners. So I liked that, actually, that there's 2 different difficulty levels. But yeah, and other Mega Man games, I think there's one other game I'll get to later that has difficulty levels. After Mega Man 2, they decided to stop with that, which I thought that was kind of weird. But I mean, there's not really much to say about Mega Man 2. I mean, it's an amazing game. It was really what started it all. And like the first one too, it's just standard run and jump. Like that's all there is: run and jump and gathering the powers. New abilities were added in later games, but it's a very simple game and a great one to pick up and play too. And I always go back to it, and I always have a blast with it. After Mega Man 2 was Mega Man 3, another classic game in the series. Like I said before, my friend owned this, and I borrowed it from him all the time, always played it at his house. And ever since I was a kid, I always did prefer it over the second one. I guess there's a few reasons for this. I guess in terms of differences, this Rush was a new addition, which was an awesome character for the Mega Man series. Rush Coil, Rush Jet, Rush Marine, very fun to use, and some of the levels were designed around that. There was a slide, which made the game feel a lot faster, and it allowed you to, I don't know, it changed the level design in some interesting ways, I thought. You had the dock robots, which were like, you had to fight bosses from Mega Man 2 again, but they were much harder this time around. It was a longer game than Mega Man 2, a lot more content. The dock robot stages, a lot of people, I think, are kind of hit and miss with those. I liked them. I thought they were very challenging and changed the original levels in some interesting ways. And I just liked the game being longer. The soundtrack. The soundtrack in this, I actually prefer over Mega Man 2. It's a little more quirky, I found there's more catchy songs overall. I thought the Robot Masters were great here, a lot of interesting ones. You had Proto Man, with the addition of Proto Man's theme, which was fantastic. It had one of the more interesting storylines too, I thought, in a Mega Man game. And I guess this is, after this, a lot of people felt the series kind of dropped off. Like, a lot of people actually just stopped playing the series after this. But it remains a classic, and one thing I'm always confused by, Kenji Inafune, he's always considered it his least favorite in the series. I guess it had a troubled development period. I don't know, it's crazy to me, because I think this game is such a high quality game. Definitely one of my favorites in the classic series, and one that I always go back to. It is, I guess I will say it is, I've always felt that it's kind of the easiest one in the classic series. I guess another thing added, although, no, these were in Mega Man 2, energies, but energy tanks refill your entire health bar, and you can get up to 9 of them in this game. And not only that, extra lives drop an insane amount in this game, and I found it makes the game quite easy. If you're playing without them, it's fairly challenging, but I don't know, health drops a lot more often too. I don't know, for some strange reason, I've always found this game a lot easier than the others in the series, even though it's much longer too. So it's also a good intro point to the series. Either Mega Man 2 or 3 will do fine. But yeah, it's a fantastic game. I absolutely love Mega Man 3. After Mega Man 3, of course, Mega Man 4. Now, this came out, I want to say, I don't remember exactly, but it was around the time Super Nintendo came out. So I think that was one of the main reasons a lot of people decided not to play this one. And the people that did play it, I know a lot of people consider it to be too similar to the previous ones. This is when a lot of people felt Mega Man was just like the same old, same old. For me, though, I love the Mega Man formula so much, just choosing your Robot Masters, finding out the weaknesses, going through Dr. Wily's castle, or castles. Like, the games to me, the level designs and music have been so great that I actually have never really minded the formula not really changing all that much. I mean, we have, in the classic series, Mega Man 1 through 10, and they never get old to me. Some of the ones in the series I like less than others due to certain decisions. We'll get to some of those later, but at least with Mega Man 4, I thought there was some really cool additions this time around. And I just never felt that same old with this game. It was a step back in terms of music, I thought. The music in Mega Man 4 was definitely nowhere near as good as Mega Man 3, but it was still overall a great soundtrack. Dustman's theme is one of my all-time favorites. But Mega Man 4 brought the charge shot, which a lot of people seem to shit on the charge shot. Like, a lot of people don't seem to really like it. I thought it was a great addition to the series. Again, like with the slide in Mega Man 3, it changed the level designs in some interesting ways. And there was almost like a risk-reward system, because if you were holding your charge and you got hit, you lost it. So, do you hold your charge shot to do extra damage to a boss or enemy, or do you just go for normal bullets? I always loved that kind of mechanic. So I thought that was a great addition to the series. Other than that, yeah, it is kind of your same old. But Mega Man 4 actually is challenging. I thought, like, Mega Man 2 on difficult mode is sort of challenging, and Mega Man 1 can definitely be challenging, but Mega Man 4, I thought, was like the perfect difficulty level. It had such a great curve, and it was a pretty nasty game. It's one of the harder games in the original series, I thought. So that was a great thing, and I thought the level design was really good. I had no problems with it. The Robot Masters were starting to get a bit silly at this point, but I mean, they always kind of were silly. I mean, Snake Man is pretty silly Robot Master when you think about it. So it doesn't seem too crazy to consider like Dust Man, where he was like a giant vacuum. It's silly, but it's kind of endearing in a way. I actually like just the humorous Robot Masters and how weird they are. But yeah, Mega Man 4, I've always found it to be a very underrated game. Visually, it's a decent step up over Mega Man 3. I just think it's one of those games at the time, and where at the time people just wanted that next Mega Man on Super Nintendo with the crazy updated graphics. And now it's one of those games that people don't really go back to because they feel, oh, it would be too similar to all the rest of the Mega Man games. But I kind of feel like people didn't give it enough of a chance. Same with other games in the series. But again, that could be just me. I'm such a hardcore Mega Man fan that like I don't really mind very minor changes in the formula, and I don't get that fatigue that I guess some other people do. But I don't know, Mega Man 4 always remains one of my favorites. Again, it was one of those games I played as a kid. My friend owned it with a friend that had Mega Man 2 and 3. Or no, he didn't own it. One of my other friends owned it, and I would rent it at times. And that's my one friend that had Mega Man 2. Mega Man 4 is his favorite in the original series. Yeah, it's great. I don't know, one of the more underrated games. I don't quite understand the hate with Mega Man 4, but yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. Now, with Mega Man 5, I think this is where people started to feel fatigue. Super Nintendo had been out for like a year at this point, and I think it's a bit more understandable with this one, and especially Mega Man 6. Now, Mega Man 5, I'll admit, it's flawed, but at the same time, there are a lot of nostalgic memories with this game. Mega Man 5 was the game that introduced me to the series. I know my friend was always telling me, you know, when he had Mega Man 2 and 3, but he's like, play the Mega Mans, they're so good. And before I borrowed 2 and 3, I rented Mega Man 5 from a local video store, and I immediately fell in love. I still remember the first time playing it. Like, I was so terrible at it, like I'm sure most people are when they first play Mega Man, where I could only get through, like Gravity Man's level was like the only level I could get through and get to him, but I could never beat him. It took me like a solid, like, 3 or 4 days of playing to eventually be able to beat him, which sounds so pathetic nowadays, because Mega Man 5 is actually one of the easiest games in the series, but, and I finally did kill him, and I got that password screen, and I remember just being so thrilled. I was just like, yes! And I just wrote down the password, and I was so excited. And then I was at that brick wall because it was like, oh shit, I can't reach any of these other bosses, but I kept at it, I kept trying, and I would rent the game over and over and over again. And eventually I got through it. I stuck with it, and I got through it, and, you know, I started to get better at Mega Man games, and then I borrowed 2 and 3 and beat those, and just, I was so obsessed with the series as a kid. I had to get every game. I had to, you know, play all the Mega Man games, and this extended to the X games as well. Even though I didn't play a Super Nintendo until like years after the NES. So Mega Man 5 is an extremely nostalgic game for me. Basically, it's more of the same. I mean, the music is actually even a bigger step down than Mega Man 4. At the same time, though, the music's fantastic. It's great music. There's some interesting Robot Masters and level designs, but some of them are kind of boring. Like Gravity Man in particular, his level where you're kind of walking upside down in the level is really cool. It's a shame they don't do much with that mechanic or gimmick though, because that level is actually really easy. And in fact, that's one of my main complaints with Mega Man 5. It's a very easy game, and the level design does seem a bit more, on the whole, a bit more uninspired than previous games. You still had your charge shot, which was great, because I actually really liked the charge shot. You still had your slide, of course. Rush Coil worked in a weird way in this game. I really didn't like how Rush Coil worked, where you kind of had to, like, jump on him, then jump off him again. Like, it didn't have a lot of height to it. It was really weird how Rush Coil worked. You had Beat in the game, where you had to collect letters in the level, and you get Beat that flies around you and you know, it attacks enemies. I thought that was cool, a cool unlockable to get. The story was pretty laughable, because it's like the X series where it's like, oh, the bad guy, it's not Wily this time, but, you know, it turns out to be, of course, Dr. Wily, which, you know, that was like kind of like the running joke of the series at this point. So Mega Man 5, I must admit, I'm a bit clouded by nostalgia with this game. I will admit it's flawed compared to a lot of games in the series, but for whatever reason, I always have fun when I go back to it. It's just such a, I guess, nostalgic game to me that I'll never get tired of it. It still is definitely one of my favorites in the series. Though people that are tired of the Mega Man formula or aren't really into Mega Man at all, maybe not a great game, but I still think it's a great game to start with, though, because considering how easy it is. Even though I struggled with it as a kid, I think nowadays people might go back to it and say, oh, this is not too bad. But yeah, Mega Man 5, I really love it, and of course, I think I'll always love it, because it's the game that started my passion for the series. Now, Mega Man 6 is a pretty interesting game. Capcom didn't publish this one, Nintendo did, because this was an extremely late NES release. The NES was pretty much dead at this point. Everyone was playing the Super Nintendo. In fact, the N64 might have been even coming out fairly soon. And Mega Man 6, I never knew this existed until the emulator days. When I was a kid, I always assumed Mega Man 5 was the last one because I had never heard of a Mega Man 6. I had never seen it in stores, at Blockbuster or at game stores. My friend didn't know about it either, and of course the internet. I didn't have internet before a lot of people did. I lived in a rural area where you get like dial-up, but we didn't even have dial-up for a long time. When we did get internet, it was dial-up, and we had dial-up for a long time. And the browsing, you couldn't even browse much. Bad times. Those were bad times. But yeah, I didn't know the existence of a Mega Man 6. So when emulators came out, and I delved into that, and looking at all the games for the NES, I saw Mega Man 6. I was just like, wait, what? There's a Mega Man 6? I never knew, so I was extremely excited to finally get to play Mega Man 6. And I gotta say, there was a bit of disappointment with it. It's not one of my favorites in the series, I'll say that. A lot of people complain about the more of the same type of feel of Mega Man games, and I did kind of feel it with this, but with Mega Man 6, it just felt a bit off compared to the rest of them. It just felt like a lot of the charm was gone. The music, I think, it's one of the weaker soundtracks in the series. It's still a great soundtrack, don't get me wrong, but it lacks a lot of like the magic that other Mega Man games I had, I thought. I thought the Robot Masters were pretty boring. There were like 2 of them that were like designed by like they were like contest winners of some kind, and I swear I read somewhere that Nightman was a Canadian design, which I thought that was pretty cool. The level design I thought was relatively boring for the most part. Like, this game felt a lot more run and gun than previous Mega Man games. The castle stages were pretty hard, though. I thought the castle stages were actually among the hardest in the series in Mega Man 6. There were like suits you could wear, like these power suits that were kind of, I don't know, they weren't that fun. And other than that, the other additions were like some splits in the levels. You could fight like, you could like collect, I don't know, there was like alternate routes in some of the levels you could take, which, an interesting idea, but wasn't executed all that well, I thought. But yeah, when I first played it, I gotta say I was kind of disappointed with it. I've gone back to it a few times since, and I don't know, there's still something that feels a bit off with it. It's hard to explain, really. But it's still an enjoyable game, don't get me wrong. I think if you like the Mega Man series, there's still a lot to enjoy here, and it's got a good challenge level overall, especially once you get to those castle stages. But if there was ever a Mega Man game in the series that I definitely played and felt, well, this is definitely more of the same, and in kind of like a bad way, it's definitely with Mega Man 6. Although I've heard there's quite a bit of fans for this game. But it's, yeah. Interesting though, it is one of the more expensive ones of the original 6 games on the NES. Mega Man 5 is the most expensive, oddly enough. But yeah, Mega Man 6, definitely still a game worth playing, and a very solid platformer run-and-gun game. Still, if you compare it with a lot of NES games, it still holds up, I think, quite well. I mean, it's definitely the best game graphically, I think, in the original series, at least. But yeah, Mega Man 6, not one of my favorites, but still enjoyable. Now, Mega Man 7 was the first entry in the Classic series on the Super Nintendo, and when it came out, Mega Man X was already out. Mega Man X was a revelation for the series. A lot of people loved that game. It was, Mega Man updated, fully updated. So I think Mega Man 7 disappointed a lot of people when it came out. I remember playing it after Mega Man X, and it definitely was a bit jarring going from X to 7. I always rented this Mega Man 7 from a local video store when I had a Super Nintendo. And Mega Man 7, It's all right. Visually, of course, it's, you know, a Super Nintendo game, but I don't really like the art style in this game. Everything is really big. Like, the sprites are huge, almost too big. Mega Man is, like, gigantic, and it makes dodging enemies a really difficult thing to do. It makes platforming a bit sketchy, and I always hated, like, what the Mega Buster shots look like in this game. Like, it looks like he's shooting, like he has, like, a pea shooter. I don't know, it was always distracting to me. In general, I think the game's honestly kind of ugly to look at, which is... I don't say that a lot about a Super Nintendo games, but compared to the NES games, I hate the look of Mega Man 7. I always have, even as a kid, I always thought it was ugly to look at. Gameplay-wise, it's not even really a big step up. The level designs are more creative than, say, Mega Man 5 or 6, but they're not insane or anything. Music-wise, the music's very good. I really like the music in Mega Man 7. It's fantastic. There's some interesting bosses, and there's a lot of cool secrets in Mega Man 7. A lot of cool secrets you can do. There's a shop. I think one of the biggest additions was a shop where you can get bolts throughout the levels, and you can spend them on upgrades and things like that. I don't know how to feel about that, though. I've never felt like the shop was a great addition to the series. I've always kind of felt it detracted from the games. It can make things a lot easier at times, but they always felt kind of like a cheat to me. I don't know. I don't really like shops being in my Mega Man games. That might just be me, but I don't know. I kind of prefer the Mega Man games just have, like, the power-ups in the levels. Maybe hidden off somewhere, like a balloon and wire in Mega Man 4, like that kind of deal, which I didn't talk about that in Mega Man 4. There's like 2 hidden powers that are very hard to find, that are like these neat utility powers that, you know, you wouldn't really find regularly unless you looked up a walkthrough or something like that. But I don't know, I've never been a huge fan of the shop, though I guess that's just a preference thing. But Mega Man 7's got a good difficulty to it. It's a pretty tough game, actually. Wily, the final form of Dr. Wily in Wily's Castle is one of the hardest incarnations in the entire Classic series. Like, even with the full amount of energy tanks, he's fucking hard, man. Like, this game took me a while to beat. I never did beat it as a kid. The first time I beat it was on the Anniversary Collection on the GameCube, which that's a good way to play all these too. You pick up the Anniversary Collection, not on GameCube Go, though. Do not get on the GameCube. The buttons are reversed on that, so it's like, what was A shoot or B shoot? I don't remember, but it was the most uncomfortable and awkward positioning you could imagine. If you're going to get the Anniversary Collection, get on PS2 or Xbox. Do not get the GameCube version. But yeah, Mega Man 7, you know, it's an enjoyable game, but it's definitely got its problems, and it's not one I go back to too often. Mainly because it can be a pain in the ass at sometimes, and just, you know, how ugly it looks. But some of the boss battles are really cool, I gotta say. Like Freeze Man, I think that's a great fight. Really fantastic Robot Master there. The story is nothing to write home about either. I guess another interesting thing with Mega Man 7 is you fight 4 Robot Masters in the beginning, then you have a mid-stage, then 4 other Robot Masters, then you have the Wily stages. I really did not like that as a kid, and I don't like it now. You know, limiting options is not a good idea for the Mega Man games. I don't know why they went with that decision. And some future Mega Man games took that as well. It's really baffling to me, because it removes a lot of the open-endedness of, like, the levels, you know, choosing what level you want to tackle first. Having only 4 choices in the beginning, that's pretty lame. So yeah, Mega Man 7, not one of my favorites in the Classic series. Okay guys, that will do it for part 1. I've noticed it's almost 30 minutes now, so the rest of the series will be talked about in part 2, so hope to see you then.